Hi, welcome back to our final series here today of the B stream. We're getting into SG.pro versus PACT, two teams, one of which we're both very familiar with them both, but definitely very different paths that they've walked to get to this stage here. Once again, I'm Jay. I'm joined by Blake for this one, and well, we got to see SG.pro yesterday, and they've definitely looked much better than their previous performances in previous cups.
Yeah, and you know when you're like going to a restaurant, right? You have a bit of a gut feeling on what you're going to order, but then when you actually get there, you don't quite know. I've been like this the whole night. I was like, oh, what am I thinking about this game? Like, you've got PACT, who's been completely undefeated, out from the group stage. They looked really good. They've come into the Swiss stage. They got a good win over Skade. They 2-0'd Alternate Attacks last night. But then you have a look at SG.pro, and you're sort of thinking, okay, they upset Copenhagen Flames by a pretty big margin yesterday. Yeah, the series was really close, but they played some really explosive Counter-Strike and was really impressive for that kind of an upset.
Yeah, the performance in this cup alone has definitely been better than the previous one. You know, obviously,
yeah.
as the time has gone on, SG.pro have gone from being this explosive new sort of like very big sort of underdog team to now suddenly being, you know, a definitive sort of like, you know, bottom of the table, squad. And in that respect, like, it hasn't been the best of times for them in that respect. But in this particular cup alone, they have actually looked particularly good. And now, as you mentioned, here in the 2-0 bracket, this could be their opportunity to make qualification for a playoff spot once again. And for this team, it would finally be the accumulation of what has been a very big dry spell, I feel like, for those guys. You know, they've had a very, very difficult time over the course of the last few months. You know, managing to fail for a lot of big sort of events to qualify for.
Yeah.
You know, going out in Swiss in the last cup, in particular in 95.5, was probably, I think, the biggest sort of devastating blow for them. So to see them sort of revive in this one, potentially make top 12 one more time, like, this is a real good match for them to be in.
Yeah, and PACT are one of these teams for me where they seem to be maybe not so much consistent, but they're not one of those Polish teams that just out of nowhere get a big victory. Like, when I look at Wisla, they come out of like 95-3, they get a win. They come out to 95-5, they get a win. And you're sort of looking at this team, and when you've got some of the Uraves and Wisla Krakow and teams like that who are getting these first places out of sort of nowhere, I then look at PACT and I think, well, they've done okay. Like, they're making playoffs. They're sort of like middle of the table in MDL. They didn't quite make playoffs there. But yeah, even in some of the lower tier events like your esports tour pro, where you're around your Polish teams, they're not even getting a deep run in that. So look, going into this game, we did see both of these two teams facing off against each other in the group stage, Jay, where honestly, PACT pretty much just like absolutely pounced on SG.pro. That was a pretty simple series for the Poles.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that respect, like, you know, it was a 3-mapper series, as you're right, you know, but you're right to say that they pounced on them. 16-4 on the first map, 16-9 on the third one. You know, like, there was a bit of a moment, yeah, where they might have fallen apart on against SG.pro in the past. But, you know, for them to sort of like just take that kind of dominating scoreline on their maps, like, that looks to be a very good setup for the Polish team. And you're right about, you know, them sort of being in this weird sort of spot where they're doing okay in the Polish region, but in general Europe, it's not really been as great for them.
Yeah.
Their first appearance in 9-5 was actually during the last cup in 9-5-5, where they went out in the top 15 Swiss system. So that's like at the end of the Swiss overall. I believe that's in the round 5 matches. So they got close to qualifying for playoffs, but now they've got 3 more chances to make it happen this time around. We'll say the vetoes coming up on screen. Train picked in by SG.pro, Dust 2 picked in by PACT, and Nuke being the decider. Quite curious to see that Train pick coming in from SG.pro, actually, because that was the 16-4 result from PACT.
I actually like it. I really do. And most people are probably looking at that thinking, what? Like, that makes no sense. But I think SG.pro are a really good trained team. Now, I didn't get to see that game, but it's showing me they've got confidence, and obviously something went seriously wrong. Obviously something did not pan out right on that map of Train. We've seen them play it. We saw against Heretics, they 16-4'd them, and they didn't have a chance to play against Copenhagen Flames because they banned it. But I think SG.pro are a really strong train team. So going into this, I am a little bit surprised that it's come out, but at the same point, it gives me a little bit of a confidence to say, you know what, SG.pro have been able to do their homework, and they've got something up their sleeve in this game in particular.
Well, it's definitely not that you would usually see PACT picking into. Definitely not one of their strongest ones. They played it quite frequently over the last few months, but their results have been pretty poor, to say the least. Like, there was that SG.pro result, which is probably their biggest sort of win. Other than that, they've got wins above Cova and Excellency and Alternate Attacks. That's all the results that they have wins, you know, in this map in the last 3 months. So, you know, in general, it's not one of those ones where you expect them to have a particularly good time. And in that respect, I can see where, you know, it could swing either way, really, for the first map. Like, I think, honestly, that'll be the very clear pace setter for this series because, you know, we've seen SG.pro be good on it against other teams in the past, but then you see PACT, and it's like, well, they got that dominant result in the group stage, so, you know, what's the damage there?
Well, another thing to sort of consider too, right, is I'm not really too sure about the A-stream and some of the morning games, but at least in the games we've covered today and yesterday, we've had so many upsets. We saw Galaxy Racer being able to overwhelm K23. We saw SG.pro beating Copenhagen Flames yesterday, and now we just had the upset where Giants 2-0'd alternate attack. So I'm kind of going into this and sort of thinking this has been one of, yeah, we've seen over the course of the Nights of 5 Cups, we have seen upsets, but I don't think as often as this one. We've seen so many upsets coming through in the Swiss stage from yesterday and today that, honestly, for me, I'm kind of leaning towards a gut feeling of SG.pro. I know that they got pounced in their first series against PACT, and the PACT have been completely undefeated. But for SG.pro, considering how they played yesterday, I think that they've got some advantages to bring forward into this series, especially with the veto being slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crucial thing to remember about PACT is that, yes, they are undefeated in series. They're not undefeated